Why do I know more about Kyle Rittenhouse than I do about Jeffrey Epstein?
And I respect that because I love power. Motivation, deviation, stimulation. 3, 2, 1. Welcome back to
Buckle up, baby.
episode 11. What
11.
happened? What happened on the intro?
I don't know. You didn't join me.
You lost your shit. Oh, we always jumble it together?
Yeah, I thought
Welcome
it was
back to
Buckle
Buckle
Up,
Up,
baby.
baby.
This was not the hardest. I don't think it was.
It really
I think
wasn't.
maybe we're hitting our stride a little bit.
We're coming out of the dip.
Yeah.
And it's funny you say that because I was thinking that that on the way here, I felt like I found myself like on the middle of the highway on the way over here. I'm like, oh, it's like autopilot now. It felt much more automated. Like,
Yeah.
this is what we do. I'm going to set, in the beginning of something, of a creative endeavor, every step is like calculated thinking. Where does this go? Where does this? How do I do this? Okay, now I put it to here. It's all like new territory.
Yeah.
It kind of feels like we've created our own little campus and like we know the way around campus. Or we're learning the way around campus.
Yeah. Also, I mean, the editing of it, also the workflow.
It's like all of it. When you go back to college after break, after you've been there, and then you like know your way around.
Yeah.
So this is like our own little space, and the whole process is our own space.
Yeah.
And it's starting to get that rhythm where it's true. Like it just becomes more fluid and natural and easier to do.
Yeah.
Because we've done a bunch of them.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to, when the work of it is the least of it, where we can just like sit, talk, put it together, put it out, and that's that.
And it's the least. You mean effort, and it's more like pleasurable and fine. And,
the work is like a muscle already that like you know exactly what to do, and then you put all the thought into the, because we're still figuring out the workflow, like the editing of it, the images, the thumbnails, this and that.
Oh, for sure. It definitely felt that way, that it was not as conscious doing it all.
Right.
Like, it was all much easier.
Right.
Yeah, the thumbnail game is good.
I got the templates. Yeah, no, I figured it out. One of the benefits of graduating in the recession in 2009 was having all these tools at your disposal for the first time, like Google Docs and Illustrator and Photoshop, and just having to figure out how to use it. So like I'm like when I have like a knack for that. Like we're using Canva, I think, for so like I just kind of figured out I find the stuff I need. It flows.
You're saying that in the recession when we weren't doing anything, it allowed for like building skills organically as opposed to like on a job or in a school, you could like find things.
Yeah, because you kind of had to figure out what to do with yourself if you graduated in 2009. Like I was in finance. That wasn't going to happen.
It was such a slap in the face to all the
like-
people that did safe things at a time.
Yeah.
And it's not like in college you can really do anything adventurous. You're just in college. So you're along for this sort of like ride that's telling you what to do. And like they present to you options, and even the interesting or cool majors aren't going to do anything for you until you get out there and start experiencing things. It's like modeled experience. College is like simulation. It's like, this is what it's like to work at an ad agency. Here's what and it's all completely not fully representative of what's going on at an agency now. It's people who used to work in advertising like 10 years ago, and they're bringing you their experience, which is dated.
Yeah.
So it's not, sometimes in college, the problem is they're not building skills. They're trying to model real world, when it's like, I feel like college should focus much more on building skills that can be applied. And they're oftentimes trying to simulate. And if that's the case, then just send them into a job and don't waste time paying for classes. Get paid or to work for free and get the skills. Because I remember coming out of college learning at an accelerated pace. The first gig I had as an intern, I was at Berkeley, and then I took one course on the last semester of the Berkeley College of Music, teaching me a little bit about computers and production. Thank God, because then when I got out into the real world and started recording and stuff, I had a little bit of something. But then I was like, oh, in 2 weeks, I just covered the last 2 years of school, and the rest is history. Just like comparing what you learn on the job, and then how that all of a sudden reveals to you what an epic waste of time the curriculumization of knowledge passing is at college.
We also went to college at like the very beginning of a major shift. I declared my major in marketing.
Yeah.
I remember it was like 2007.
Still
or
don't know
8.
what that is, but yeah.
And I was sitting there. This guy in his like 50s or 60s was teaching, and like he didn't mention Facebook once.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember a very clear thought occurring to me of like, this is going to be useless. If I'm gonna sit in business school, I might as well just do finance. And I went after that class. I went and switched my major to finance. It was a difference of like 4 or 5 classes. It wasn't
Right.
a huge deal. But when we got out of college, a lot of the tools that you then needed didn't even exist while we were in college. Just like a year later, like you couldn't write an email from your phone while we were in college, and then a year or two later, everyone was writing emails from their phone.
You could.
And the emails you write from your phone are like slightly different. Like
You
the etiquette
could,
changes a
though,
little.
right?
There were people with smartphones, but most people didn't have. If you had a smartphone, it
But
was
people
a
had
BlackBerry.
Blackberries.
Yeah, but it wasn't.
It wasn't done.
It wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't. It was still like a bit of a novelty, I think.
Mm-hmm. The first iPhones I saw was when I was in college, and I started seeing iPhones
Yeah.
rolling out. And I'm like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Can I see that? Like,
Exactly. And it was like, yeah. Oh, there's no keyboard. You have to type on the screen. Like
That's
that's
weird.
not for me. I'm a flip phone guy. I don't do that. And then like next year, I got an iPhone. And, all of a sudden, everything changed.
I
So, yeah,
remember my first iPhone was the iPhone 4, and the second I did it, I called my wife, and I'm like, oh my God. I literally do remember it. I'm like, oh my goodness. Like, it just, I remember a very distinct moment
Yeah.
of not just, oh, this is a better phone. I'm like, I have a different thing now.
Yeah. Well, I remember I was interviewing in the city.
The first text, boom, 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 boom. I'm like, that felt so good. So much better than the,
Yeah.
oh, that was maybe an Apple noise too. What did the
No,
BlackBerry
It was
noise?
just. I never had a BlackBerry. I don't know.
What was the old text noises?
Yeah. I think that was it.
And then Apple decided to go, when the emails got sent.
Yeah.
So satisfying.
Yeah.
Google also, I was recently staying by a friend who has like the Google hooked up to the lights. Every time I shut the lights off, it just went, boom.
Oh, nice.
I'm like, hey, Google, lights on. Boom. It was so pleasant. There's something calculation there. They designed it. There's no high end on the sound, so it never actually stings. It just goes, okay, in digital language. You? No. Anyway, I remember that time, and we came from an interesting time coming into the workplace when nobody knew what to tell us, and we didn't know what we were in. Like, we had no economy experience. I remember at the time saying, it's the economy. I just learned that phrase and said it to make myself and people around me feel better and justify being painfully unemployed, having no idea what I was talking about. What do you mean it's the economy? What economy? What the hell is an economy? Like, I just graduated. I just was a senior last year. I know what a student is. I know what that definition means. Now I'm working, but the economy. And that's all you could say because we had no experience to make the vocabulary about these things any meaningful.
Yeah.
Unless you followed finance in college and you were into it. All this stuff meant like there was this promise of what there was essentially 17th grade after you graduate college. There's like the next grade, which is working grade. Right. And what you do is you sign up here and you get a fixed salary. And then there's I imagine that's what it was, but we were so shaken by the fact that whole infrastructure crumbled.
Exactly.
And we stepped into like off a cliff.
Yeah.
We were like, what happened? There was supposed to be a building here that we were all supposed to go into, but the school's burnt down.
We all moved home. We didn't get our own apartments because like no one had jobs. And then that's why a lot of people I know now work in tech because they were gonna work in finance. The only people I know who got jobs in finance had family connections. Nothing wrong with that, but that's just it only worked out for like 3 or 4 people I know actually got jobs in finance.
People went to law school, like retreated to law school. Like, I gotta go back to school where it's safe. It's like from the storm of the crisis.
A lot of people went to law school, and then a lot of people were like, well, if I can't do finance, the only people that are hiring now are these like little tech startups in the city. And because we were the youngest people working, we were automatically the social media people. Right. Like, oh, I don't know, are you on Twitter or Facebook? Do you want you do that? And now it's like there's a whole, it's all codified and
credible and it's displaced what it was. It's obviously like now these companies are like, can you do our Twitter? Like they're the ones who are like, we are not on TikTok and we feel irrelevant. Like the biggest companies.
Yeah.
It's not only like, a real thing. It's flipped and become the thing that people are like aspiring to succeed in.
Right.
You know, companies are like, we need to improve our socials game because that's the new. It's the new advertising. It's the new everything.
Yeah.
It's such a funny space to revisit that time period
Well,
because it wasn't like just start a YouTube channel. It's like that wasn't even people didn't do that then.
Yeah.
Like YouTube, I don't remember what it was then, but it wasn't an economy.
Yeah.
It wasn't a job.
Yeah.
That's a little unfortunate because we did have time and you learned some skills and stuff. But imagine if it was what it was today, people would say, listen, so like you have this time, you're living at home, whatever. There's nothing stable out there. Like it would have been a good time for YouTube to be what it is now then. So that people would have just gone on and started making stuff or doing stuff, even real estate or, you know, whatever. I don't know. Maybe they wouldn't have taken advantage of it, but it wasn't quite as developed then or credible as a real source of a potential building a business around YouTube or social media in that way.
For sure
it was
not.
Purely luxury and it was purely just distractions.
So that's where I think we are now with the crypto stuff, where like it's a little bit. It's like misunderstood and not quite utilized yet. But I think 10 years from now there'll be an NFT guy at every company.
Yeah,
there'll be like a head of NFTs at AT&T and Pepsi and whoever.
I saw a clip of Kevin O'Leary, and he was like, "I used to say if you wanted a profitable job, if you want something to be profitable, if you want to be safe, if you want something that's going to pay well." It was 4 words: engineer, engineer, engineer. Now I'm looking for video creators and I'm looking for graphic designers because I want to tell a story. There is nothing more valuable for a business than telling a story. I'm going to now pay these guys who I used to think were wasting time doing videos. I'm going to pay them $150K a year coming out of school because I want to sell my brand. I want to tell my story. That's where the new market is. That's where the new creator economy is.
Yeah.
And I want a royalty for every video that you make for me.
Yeah, well,
how's my Kevin O'Leary?
That was pretty good.
Coming along. You can hear the hit points.
I like the shift in my business.
In my business. Yeah. That's what I want. But he was just saying like the value, like artists are being valued in ways that it's like you don't just do art now. Like the art to service business because stories actually sell businesses.
I thought the only creative thing that was an option for me was marketing when I was in college. I mean, graphic design and
marketing,
video
Michael?
Content creating. What is marketing?
What is marketing versus branding versus advertising? I'm sure the folks out there would love to know.
All of that branding, advertising, all falls under marketing. It's like, I mean, marketing is literally you have a product and who are you going to sell it to?
So it's making decisions, or it's being creative?
No. It's a guy in the company who's making the market. Or like you're like, if we sell canes, I'm gonna go find the market for people who buy canes. Like that's like marketing is like who you sell your product to, and there's different ways to find your market, and then
marketing
then
encompasses all that effort of like the research.
Yeah.
That's marketing.
Yeah. I mean, marketing right now, a lot of it is like data. Last time I checked was data analysis. Like it's a lot of numbers crunching, and it's basically like spreadsheets and data analysis. There's only very few people who really get to come up with ideas.
There's a lot less creativity and more wonky technical research.
It's mostly like who do we serve the ads to? How are they performing, and how do we optimize that?
And analyzing information and looking at I look at these charts on like our YouTube and my YouTube, you know, and I'm sure the right brain would be like, oh, so cool, look at what's happening here, and I go, there's a green line, there's a yellow line, there's a red line, and in December they all went like this, and they went like this. That's a nice shape, but nothing translates to me in ideas from that.
Right. But yeah, so the people who are really good at that are really successful. But yeah, I thought the marketing people who were good were like these, you know, guys with like those like clear glasses or like rimless glasses and like super like creative and imaginative, and it was really the people who were really good with numbers that were like doing really well.
I guess it's the guys who can see all that data and then come up with something. That's where the creativity comes in. It's like, so here's what we're gonna do. The strategy is based on the market analysis and based on the data we're getting. We're gonna now launch a campaign to get canes in the hands of every single elderly person on this nursing home strip in this piece of geography where people pull the most for, you know, leg injuries.
Exactly.
So it's a combination.
Or there was just like an explosion in this town. Let's get our canes over there.
Right. And branding is like, how do you craft a story that appeals to them?
Branding is I don't know. I've never worked in branding. I mean, I did like brand identity stuff, but like, how would you define it?
I think what branding is. So that's that's a good definition of marketing, because I I always think of marketing, advertising, anything that's like trying to sell you something as one thing. Sales, marketing, like you lump it all together. Right. But if you break it down technically, that's a good isolated definition of marketing is defining and analyzing and discovering what the market is. And then, okay, now we have to target it. And how do we do that? So there's a couple of things. I guess there's sales, where you're trying to pitch to those people that you think might be into the product. But in the process of sales, branding, my understanding is, what image or feeling do you want that person that you've identified, or man or woman, to feel when they see your cane? Do they and so what kind of stuff, and that informs everything else. So the brand is going to inform how we're going to advertise, what color we're going to paint it, because like I think Steve Jobs has a viral video out there talking about Nike being the best brand in the world. When you think of Nike, do you think of do you think of utility, like shoes that work well? Or do you think of victory, accomplishment, success, hard work? And Nike did that not by saying, we have great laces, we have great swooshes, look at these wonderful designs. They just basically took their shoe and put it in the context of athletes who are successful. And all those different campaigns that make you think of Nike as success, cool, motivated. Right. And that's the brand of Nike, like, which isn't tangible. It's these ideas that you derive when you see the swoosh.
A good word, one word for it is probably positioning. Like where do we position ourselves, and how do we position ourselves?
But a lot of it is also in creating a brand. So it's like Apple, it's aesthetic. There's this thread that runs through it, so, where it's think differently, be different, be creative, think outside the box. Don't do what everyone else is telling you to do. Technology is there to assist you in being creative, not this thing you have to learn, not this headache for you. Whereas before, computers were like, well, you have to be a computer person. Like, an Apple said, no, we're changing all of that whole experience. So they have this brand too. I feel like maybe it's gotten clouded and confused these days because it's gotten nerdier. Like, you watch these keynotes now, they're not like rock star events than what they used to be. Now they're like, the A7 Bionic chip is the fastest chip we've ever had, and it has a dual heating system. And people go, oh my God, it has a dual. I've been waiting for the dual heating system.
That might be that might be
we are so excited. How's my Tim Cook? We are amazed that iPhones are now in blue.
Is that what he sounds like?
Tim Cook?
I've never heard him speak.
You've never seen an Apple keynote?
I don't think so. And
now we're gonna bring up Phil to show you the blue iPhone. You never heard of it?
He sounds like a South Park character.
Oh, see him guy. No, he sounds like, we are so excited that the iPhone has sold 1 billion iPhones in the last month, and it's so important at Apple that we And Steve Jobs was more like, he was had more finesse and less about the wonky nerdy stuff.
I actually think I think it might be intentional, because Apple, I think, went away from that for a while and lost some of the hardcore users, and they're trying to get back to like the hardcore creative professionals using their machines again. Yeah. But anyway, that's beside the point.
I think they lost some of that because it got worse. Like, things didn't work as well. Like,
well, yeah, right. So but the branding goes along with the product.
Right.
The product. Well, I guess the marketing people would say, we're losing these customers, and then they would go to the product people and say, how do we get them back? And they'd say, well, we'll add another port to the side, so it's better for people who need to use it for serious stuff. And then the branding is like, okay, so now we have to like seem more serious. So at the keynote, drop all the kitschy stuff and let's like talk like raw numbers. I don't know. Maybe
but there's
that's
a way to present
work.
Seriousness. Steve Jobs never presented it as we're just for fun. He always was like, never compromised on how serious they were, but he would present it as, superior, better, not the A5 Bionic chip.
Because they were trying to get an iPhone into everyone's hands. Now that they do, now the next phase is like, everyone has an iPhone. Now we need to like upsell the people who need to do serious work.
Right.
So like maybe that has shifted a little bit.
Like, also, Steve Jobs, when he would present, wouldn't say something to the effect of, we've maximized gigabyte space, so you can now have this. Like, he wouldn't talk about the technical. He would say, I want to fit a phone, a music player, and a computer in your pocket. Right.
So he was,
and it can be done.
Yeah.
What would that look like? He would present it in ways that were like emotional and human, not technical.
So he was a product guy. I think you'd call him a product guy, which I think is kind of like Simon Sinek a little bit. And I think that's where a lot what I learned working at these startups was the what I wanted to do really was product, not really marketing. It was like ideating and brainstorming like things and then putting them into practice.
What the hell is Simon Sinek in your opinion?
I really only know that one video he does about what is this thing? The Martin Luther King Jr. thing? Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
A real doctor? Let's not go there. What was his thing about Martin Luther King?
No,
it's MLK Day coming up.
He's like he didn't say like I want civil rights. He said like I want.
What did he say, Martin Luther King? He didn't say I want civil rights. I want to pass this amendment. He says I have a dream.
What do you believe in?
What do you believe in?
Yeah.
But he's always getting up there, and he's saying to people, like this guy. I know there must be street cred behind him. Because I heard in digging that he did have some successful advertising career or something. But he puts on a pair of skinny jeans and then a button down open to his belly button and goes, look around the room. Ask yourself, motivation, deviation, stimulation. What do they mean? What do they want? What do they give us? Purpose, meaning, fulfillment. That's what's missing from today's upper CEO class. You want to create better work culture? Do you? Ask yourself, culture. What's in the word culture? Cult. Cult of personality. Personality deviates from even temperament, not odd temperament. Take a minute. Breathe in. Inhale. At your next meeting, ask yourself. And I'm like, and then people clap. Ask yourself. It's like, I said, he'll be like, the kids these days, they're complaining. They don't have a purpose at work, and we give them a hard time. We've created that in them. We've thrown them into a pool, and we haven't given them floaties. They need floaties.
Well, he was.
Get in the. What happens if you put a kid out? You leave the kid in, he'll drown. You leave the kid out, he won't learn to swim. Leave them in the water. 1 floaty, 2 floaties, even 3. Take 1 away. Take 2 away. Take 3 away. Stay on the surface. Get in the water with them. Get wet. Learn to swim, and then you won't need to swim. Simon Sinek, TED Talk. Yes.
Yeah. No, that was a good impression. I've used his.
It was a long impression.
His like, because I've been like tasked with coming up with a brand before, and he has a good system basically of like
identifying,
deeply thinking about what you believe in. Like we believe people should be free. We believe, computers shouldn't be so damn confusing, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm. The core beliefs, core values.
The core belief, and if things stem from there, it's easier to think through these things.
Right.
Yeah.
He does make sense. It's not as nonsensical as I just presented it, but it's also like if you can be a smooth talker and tell people how to be successful, you can be successful. It's like there's a funny thing, but you can see through it. I mean, there's a whole world of like the keynote snake oil people. Yeah. And Gary Vee addresses this because he gets accused of that. And I've watched some of his interviews about it too, where it's like you can spot the difference. Yeah. One is, are they selling something when they talk to you? Buy my course and you'll be able to find out these secrets, like when you see this online. Or are you seeing tons of free content and you're seeing a guy who he's like, Gary Vee's like, I talk about all this stuff because I did it and now I'm sharing it. Like I did what I thought worked, it worked, and now I'm sharing it. So I'm conveying ideas as opposed to like, you want passive income? There is a difference. And I totally get it. And he's never selling anything. That's a big difference. And So
I have a response to Tim Dillon, who gives Gary Vee a lot of shit. Because I've been thinking about it. Because I love when Tim Dillon makes fun of Gary Vee. I think it's hilarious. But I don't think...
He thinks Gary Vee banned him from the internet.
It does.
Because he said, I put a video out, he was on Rogan, criticizing Gary Vee. He got it pulled, And I respect that because I love power. And Joe Rogan's just cracking up. He's like, but he got me pulled. He probably made a call, Joe. He probably called YouTube. Hi, guys. Hi, Travis. He probably called CEO and got me pulled. But I respect that because I love power. Or no, but that's okay because I respect power. That's what he said. And he's like, why would you think Gary Vee would care and pull your video? He's like, well, I also threatened to kill the president. Maybe that's why. I want to kill the president, Gary. It was a spoof on him, but he said some other things that got him banned. Obviously, Gary didn't care. But
he had another line like that. He was like, do I want to see Ghislaine Maxwell walk? If she's gonna do the show, yes, but otherwise, I really can't care. Is she going to do the show? No? Okay, then she can go to jail.
His stuff on the trial, his tweets about the trial.
I have to go back and read
Oh my
them.
God. They are just that perfect like sliver of whatever he's doing every time. Like he just, it's very rare to find a comic whose perspective cuts on every, we do a lot of Tim Dillon worshiping, but it's just like you watch his brand of things and he's only trying to be himself as best he can. It's like, it's always the way he would perceive it. And he says something worth thinking and could never express the way a comic should, but you know,
I mean, the reason he's infiltrated my mind so much is because he has a way of thinking, and he almost teaches you to think like he does through his comedy. So like, so you can look at a news story and be like, oh, what would Tim think about this?
And he's like, this is fun. And he'll say like, and good, like the best comics can do. That's the skill. It's like, this is what you're thinking. You just don't know it,
right?
And he'll say like, I don't know what he says about Ghislaine Maxwell, but certain hilarious things.
Oh, the last thing he was saying,
I don't remember it offhand. I just remember reacting like, oh, and you always go like this because it's like, that's what I think.
I think he was basically saying like, whatever she did it with such class that like America, you just have to let her walk. Like no one did it classier than she did.
And in general, even if it's like crazy, what he's also pointing out is how disproportionate the coverage of this insane story is. Mm-hmm. And not only is no one covering it, and they're ignoring it and all the details of it and not gushing over it. No one's talking about the fact that no one's covering it except a few people. Maybe Crystal and Cigar bring it up. I don't know. I don't watch them. But like no one's talking about the fact that this massive story involving and implicating so many influential people is happening, and the major news networks are not covering it, and you've got to ask why. And it makes you conspiratorial because you're just like, it's such a glaringly good point. And every comment he makes on the trial is like, nothing on CNN about this.
He said it so beautifully. He's like, why do I know more about Kyle Rittenhouse than I do about Jeffrey Epstein? Why do I know more about like a teenage boy than I do about Jeffrey Epstein?
Right.
So just think about it. Ask yourself that question. Why are the media companies telling us more about him and not him?
Yes.
It's a good question. I don't know what the answer is, but it's a good question.
It's a good question.
Yeah.
It's a good question. Anytime I can do Tim Dillon, I'm down to do it. It's a good question. It's good. It's good. I love it. It's great. It's great. Anderson, don't talk about it. Don't talk about it, Anderson.
Well, anyway, so my response to him about Gary Vee is back to what we were saying before. Is we all graduate. I'm gonna really tie this all in.
Yeah.
We graduated at a time where you really had to pivot and figure out your own strategy because everything that came before wasn't working.
And the adults in the room had no answers.
The boomers did not. I mean, Tim Dillon says like they're the worst parenting generation. They did not prepare us generally, and like especially once finance collapsed and marketing wasn't hiring, all that, like we were really left on our own to our own devices to figure things out.
They put a lot of pressure on us and gave us very little skills.
No answers.
And no answers. When it happened, they were like, well, it wasn't supposed to be like this.
Hey, you can't find a job? You should show up to their office. Show up to their office and with a handwritten letter. That'll get their attention. Like, all right, thanks. So we had to figure it out. And not only did we not have the hard skills, we also didn't have the soft skills to be like, how do I shift? How do I adapt? How do I start to think for myself and come up with ideas and execute? And there were people like Gary Vee who provided answers for us. And like,
it's interesting you use the word soft skills. You know that's like his thing for his new book.
No, I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
I think we all focus so much on hard skills. I want to focus on soft skills.
Yeah. No, and like you needed some sort of framework. Listen, I think if you're 40 and you're still listening to Gary Vee every day to like start a company, something's wrong. But if you're 22 and you need just a starting place of like, all right, how do I go about figuring out like some other plan because everything else isn't working? He's a really good place to start of like rewiring your mind a little bit of like, so I'm not going to get a 9-to-5 job. What do I do? I'm going to start here. And then you mature and you sophisticate and you, And he, for me, he provided that, I think, a little bit. I think for you also.
I didn't discover him until I was ready to throw. I mean, I discovered him later. I don't think I discovered him in my 20s or identified when the first Gary Vee video I probably ever came across was like this guy in a beanie. Shoot, I'm wearing one. He was like, I'm actually cold. It's winter over here. He was like, I used to never go to LA. Uber has single-handedly changed where I go. I didn't go to fucking LA. I couldn't get around. Forget it. I didn't have the time. Now I go. Uber has changed fucking everything. Now I'm in LA three times a year. And I go. and I enjoy it. And like, I'm like, whoa, it was intense. It was like a Facebook video or
I think
something.
your Gary Vee is morphing into Tim Dillon a little bit.
Maybe I didn't go to LA. It's Uber. Maybe fresh off of Team AD, it's something. But I saw this guy screaming at a room, and he used to focus more on like loser winner language. He doesn't do that anymore. It's a little different now. He's kind of evolved out of that. He's like, you want to fucking lose? You're gonna fucking lose. Stop complaining. You're gonna lose. And that's why I fucking win. So it was very much a little bit of that, a little machismo stuff, and that. But I used to see a lot of that, and I didn't feel like it was really speaking to me, because I took his advice without taking his advice, in a sense. Like his whole thing. One of his best points I've seen him make consistently, and it doesn't translate fully well to the Orthodox Jewish dilemma of like work providing. There's a little bit of a different standard and a different time frame, like timeline that you're on. But his big thing is we have it backwards. We tell these kids to go safe for like 10 years, save up whatever, and then maybe try things that are risky. You should be doing the riskiest, weirdest things that have maybe the biggest payoff, but the biggest risk reward ratio in your early 20s, but do it independently. Get a shitty apartment with 10 roommates. You have no wife, no kids yet, and you can just like eat peanut butter sandwiches and save and like build your skills and your ability to save and get financially, savvy, prudent, but also like experiment, play around, figure out what you are. You don't know yet, as opposed to like going into this box where you're never going to learn anything about yourself. Yeah. And then you'll find yourself 15 years later saying, what have I done? I don't even know myself or what I like, or I haven't tried anything. Yeah. And he emphasizes.
I'm laughing. I'm laughing at what I'm thinking.
Oh, yeah. So he goes. He emphasizes that a lot. Now, what I would venture to ask him is, he's like, you'll get fucking married when you're 40, and then you can Netflix and chill. I'm like, well, you can't do that in our community. Right. Like, he doesn't quite know that. Right. And I wonder what he would say to that. He would probably say, I know what he would say. I understand priorities are. If that's very important to you, you have to figure it out. I get it. It's a trade-off, bro. Like, just decide and have no regrets. Stop caring about other people. He would just say, like, be happy with your decisions and just don't one way or the other, or figure out how to turn a side hustle and make it work. His big thing is don't complain, but his big thing, his emphasis-wise, is we teach these kids, like, go for these safer jobs in the beginning, as opposed to, like, that's not when you have responsibilities. Most 22-year-olds don't have kids. They don't have a family or a house. Like, room with 10 people, eat shit for 40 years, and he started making content when he was 34. So it's like interesting to me.
I'm remembering now, the first time I saw him, I went to this like tech job fair conference that a friend of mine. It was like $300, but a friend of mine got me in for free.
In New York?
In New York, yeah. It was I must have been like 26, and I didn't know who he was, but he was doing a panel, and I was standing in the back watching, and this guy gets up. I had no idea who he was.
I know what you're going with.
This guy gets up and asks a question of like, hey, Gary, it's like, I'm working really hard, but it's not really working out. My startup's like not moving the direction. What should I do? And he just takes a minute, and he goes, stop lying to yourself. Look in the mirror, go home, stop lying to yourself. And my head exploded.
What did you think he meant by that? Like, what did you see in the guy that he saw in the guy that he was speaking to?
Well, it's like, what did I see in myself that
Sure,
that
I'm just saying, why did it resonate? Did he nail it with that response?
It resonated,
because he would have been more kind these days, I think.
No, it was mean. It was mean, but I don't know.
I think this guy wasn't putting in the work, and he picked up on it.
Yeah, probably. I mean, what I saw in myself was
he didn't ask any He didn't ask any follow-up questions to that. He just said, "Stop lying to yourself." One word answer.
I don't remember.
Okay,
I don't remember
because I was like, "That's a big presumption."
Yeah.
Okay, so he probably arrived at that, and he said, "Have you been there? Stop lying to yourself." Okay.
It was at the time I was writing a TV pilot because I just had to get it out of myself, and I was also looking for product jobs, and I think like what I heard was like, you can spend your energy making excuses and feeling bad and frustrated and complaining, or you can spend that energy actually working. Yeah, something like that.
And you were definitely doing the former.
I mean, I wasn't doing either. I wasn't truly writing this thing and going forward, and I wasn't truly trying to get a job in product. And like, when I heard that, I think something
and you might have not even been
like,
truly complaining about it. You were just limboing.
Yeah, I was limboing. I was limboing, and just it what it meant to me was like, go for one thing and go for it, and shut up and go for it, and stop getting up at conferences and being like, why isn't my startup working? Like, you think I have the answer for you? Like, there's something that that you already know. So go home and fix it. Don't why are you even here asking me about your startup?
That is harsh. I would assume he asked a few follow-up questions and discovered this guy wasn't doing anything. I hope, because
maybe
there are
that's
people
not
who
how I
are like
remember
applying this and working and like things aren't clicking in the right way. So
I don't think you have to. I don't think you have to ask follow-up questions, because I truly do think if you're getting up at a conference and asking Gary Vee a question instead of at home working on your startup, that's the answer. That's the answer. You spend a day online waiting for Gary Vee to give you some broad general thing. He's not looking at.
I'm really curious, because
metrics.
I'm sure that response was crystallized for you.
Yeah.
I'm really curious just what the question was, what the question revealed about the questioner, what was going on, because that's a bold statement. It's presumptuous if he just said that, because there is a form of that question that is valid. Like there's a form of that question where it's like, what other you might at Gary Vee like this you might possess creative ways of looking at something that I'm not seeing, like, and he does that a lot. Like I've seen people, like clips of people in his office, like people who are done it to it, who are like have huge followings and they have questions, like people who you would say, oh, they must be killing it, but they have questions on what they're doing wrong. So then that also tells you something. It tells you, like, I remember, just to pause that for a second, like being in a room on Clubhouse with these creators. And it was both encouraging and discouraging, or it was just like, whoa, top of the hill, foot of the mountain kind of thing. I'm in this room with these creators. Hey, and they're like a bunch of YouTube creators, and like question and answer, Q&A, best practices, tips and tricks on growth. Hey, so I've been on YouTube for a few years, been able to grow it a little bit, have, 60 million subscribers. No joke, millions of subs. I'm now trying to figure out, I'm like, you have questions. This guy is still like frustrated or trying to figure out like something's not working that he needs to improve on at an insane number. I was like, whoa, I'm generating this amount a month, so that's good. But I feel like, and I'm like, top of the hill, foot of the mountain. That's what I'm looking at. And I'm like, wow, okay, so I guess I'm in the right room, but the complaining will never end, or not the complaining, there's no, like, you don't reach paradise. You don't reach the Garden of Eden, and you're like, I've done it. I'm here. I've arrived. Finished. It's like, no, it's constant until you decide to slow down. And that's an interesting thing to think about, which I've seen many, many times in different areas in my career as well. But the point is that I've seen people in Gary Vee's room and his content, and they're asking stuff. But then he answers, because I think he knows they're doing the right. He's not going to tell them, stop lying to yourself. He says, oh, you guys should throw an event. If you want to increase your subscriber count, you should throw an event and have a crazy thing that everyone talks about. Like have a huge art installation that everyone's going to take pictures with, tag your event, and it'll maximize its impact online. And they're like, that's a great idea. So I guess when maybe he's speaking with people at his speed, or who knows that they'll take this guy wasn't there.
He might have picked something up, but then back to Dillon, I also remember thinking, like, I love that line. I'm gonna go home and think about it. Yeah. But also this guy might just be like a provocateur, because like that's a very provocative answer, and everyone now in the room is sitting up.
Oh, Gary might.
Yeah, and like maybe it helps this guy, maybe it doesn't. But now everyone's listening to him, and this guy's interesting. And like, I remember noticing that about him. Like
there were videos where he was interviewed, and he was like, I used to be very uncomfortable at conferences, because a marketing guy would get up there and give a whole presentation, and then it was my turn. And I said, respectfully, everything he just said is bullshit, which is satisfying. Be like, I'm sorry. And like he would go next. Next up, we have Gary Vaynerchuk, CEO of Gary, VaynerMedia. And he goes, everything you just heard is fucking bullshit. That is old thinking. And like people hate him in old advertising. They hate him.
Yeah.
And he's like, that's why I'm winning and they're losing. They're complaining because they're losing. So they shit on me. And that's okay. I don't care about other people's opinions. I don't care about their negativity. I don't even think about it. I feel bad for them. I have empathy for them. But what was I going to say? Oh, what's your response to Tim Dillon about Gary Vee? So how do you defend Gary Vee to Tim
Dillon? So although Gary Vee, I think, is a little bit of like a showboat snake oil salesman, he's not really saying anything. And I think Tim Dillon's general response is like, yeah, you should take 10 years off if you have talent and figure it out. 9 out of 10 people don't have any talent. So stop telling these talentless people to waste 10 years of their life. They should get a job at Walmart and work their way up.
Most people should fall in line, Joe. They should fall in line. Fall in line. Take your pay. Go home. Watch a movie. Go to sleep.
Yeah, that's what you're talking about. That's what he would say. Where he's like, you're convincing people to go out and try something when they have no business doing that, and you're getting paid by them in some sense, whatever, views, clicks, whatever. Meanwhile, you're making money off them. They're losing all their money and destroying their lives, and you're just kind of going on. But
That's the joke, though.
That's the joke. But I think that
fall in line. Most people should fall. I love that whole rant he goes on. I
cynicism
think it was
of
on
it.
Lex Fridman's podcast or Joe Rogan. Most people shouldn't do that, Joe. Fall in line. You're not. It's not worth it. Yeah.
He did he used to do a bus tour, and he was doing a tour, and these girls from the Midwest were like, we have friends now who moved to New York, and they're working on Broadway as actresses, and they think they're so much better than us now. He's like, they are better than you.
That was in his New York tours.
Yeah, he used to be like.
I know, and he would say, "Dude, that darkness." I would just. Yeah, he would say,
he's like, "Go home. You don't belong here."
The irony is what? I mean, Tim Dillon fell in line. His whole story reflects the antithesis of that.
No, but
he sold subprime mortgages and worked there, and then said, "I'm a comic now," and everyone's like, "Don't be a comic."
Right. So because the talent was juiced out of him through this suffering of I have to do this thing, but he actually has talent. Where is
talent something you're born with or something you nurture? It's a little bit of both.
I don't agree with him. I think everyone has something.
He doesn't agree
to
with
say
him.
And contribute.
That's the joke.
Right.
I think he's just pointing out that obvious fear or that obvious thing that's glaring that Gary doesn't really say. So he's saying the unsaid thought, but what about if these people suck?
No. I think what he says is Gary doesn't really say anything concrete. That's it. He doesn't say anything concrete, and so he's like, well, yeah. Anyone, he's like Naval can go on podcasts and be like, everybody can be rich. Mm-hmm. Who doesn't like hearing that? Mm-hmm. Who doesn't like hearing hustle, work? It's a very easy, non-concrete thing to say. But what I would say back to Tim Dillon is that at a certain point in your life, if you're trying to pivot and figure that out, that actually is very valuable to hear if you're not hearing it from your parents or your friends or anyone else in your life. For a time and place, that's very good. Past that, I think Tim Dillon's right. You should move on from that.
Well, because Gary Vee's not a comedian and Tim Dillon is, right? So it's a little bit of an unfair advantage because Tim Dillon can exist between serious and unserious. So he's pointing out what's funny about it. That's what I do when I do the parody stuff. I say ridiculous shit. The reason I think it's funny is because we're all thinking that, obviously, vague advice or actually terrible advice. What if Gary Vee was your doctor, right? Honestly, I think that pain is just negativity. That's just in your head. It's like, no, Gary, my foot is swollen. Honestly, somebody put that thought into your head, okay? Stop caring about other people's opinions, especially doctors. I mean, awful advice. Yeah. And that's the joke, but I'm exaggerating what Tim is seeing too, I think. But I think that what's interesting is there are videos of Gary Vee here and there that I've come across where he's like, the problem right now is the reverse is happening. Too many people think it's cool to be an entrepreneur, and they might not be suited for that. Maybe they should do things that are more stable for them. Because Gary Vee's message ultimately isn't about hustle and grind and talent and success. It's happiness, which is a cringy thing to swallow.
He also doesn't seem like a very happy person.
He's like the...
Happy, healthy, I'd say. He doesn't seem like a healthy person.
Could be, but he's actually seems to be so positive. He's just brewing with positivity and so happy. And he's like, I'm talking about happy. Don't you want to be? He's like, and he's not about rich life either. He has this message all the time. I know this because
he's a workaholic, so work
he
makes him
loves
happy.
it. No, because he loves it.
It's like if you're an alcoholic, you should be drinking alcohol every single day. It'll make you feel good.
No. Happiness, real happy. He says, you know how many people fucking cry in their Ferraris? I know many people crying in their fucking Ferraris. So stop trying to chase this shit. And he talks about people who want to be entrepreneurs because it seems cool and there's this cachet and coolness to it. And it's so much more work than getting a 9 to 5. Yeah. You're working all the time, but he's like, I love the work. I love the process. I love bringing my father's bottles of wine out to my fucking liquor store. He loves that stuff. Yeah. And he's like, that's why I love it. I love business. I love starting from the bottom. I love building it up. So he's about the process, not about getting to a Ferrari where you can have passive income.
Yeah.
So if you listen enough, which I've had to. If you listen enough, you really discover most of what he's saying can be reduced to, you're complaining about something. Stop doing that. If he's like, you can watch Netflix and chill and live a modest life, but don't complain that don't have a yacht. So don't have the yacht and be happy with a simpler $75K salary, whatever. Right. He's all about anything that is leading to somebody's happiness. Right. I think early days Gary Vee was winners, fucking losers, but that's still translated.
Fair.
He's like, I would be perceived as a loser, he would say. When I'm taking my father's bottles, serving it to my friends who were partying on the weekend when I was in my 20s, and they're like, Gary's not doing shit, he's just working at this liquor store. And I would bring champagne out to my friends' cars who were all going to party on the weekends and putting in their cars. Bye, guys. Back then you would have said I was the loser.
Right.
And most of the stuff, when I've seen enough of it on the scope, on the macro, you'll find your videos that you can point to. where it's like, oh, that's ridiculous. And that's where you can have fun. And that's where Tim Dillon has fun.
Right.
But ultimately, they're not even saying different things. Tim Dillon's saying people should fall on. The question is a matter of degree. Tim Dillon says most people should fall on and not try things. Well, they're better than you. But Gary Vee's message is like, if you think you have something, don't complain. Figure out a way to try to do it. Because most of you are just saying, I want, and not doing what to get to, and not doing anything to get there. You're just like, you want this, you want that. You know,
I think the through line is probably between the both of them, Tim Dillon and Gary Vee, is be honest with yourself.
Yeah.
Be honest with yourself about how much talent you have and how much work you're willing to put in to get what you want.
To nurture it. If it's there a little, maybe go a lot or whatever it is. But like put in the work.
Yeah, it'd be amazing if they dated. What a power couple. Is he married? Yeah. Gary is still.
Yeah, he's got little kids.
Still.
Married with kids, I think. Yeah.
Still.
He doesn't talk about it. He's not public with the family stuff.
Yeah.
With his own family.
How old was he when he got married?
That's a good question. That's a good question. It would be consistent with
50
whatever.
was he? How old is he now?
I think he's 46 or something. Okay. Probably maybe married in his 30. I have no idea. I don't follow.
I mean, which isn't. I mean,
unreasonable.
It's not unreasonable at all, and it's. I wish I was as wealthy as he was in his late 30s.
But no, he has a family and values all that stuff too. So he really. The thing is, Gary Vee provides enough things that he's saying and enough things that he's not saying to have wiggle room to get out of any accusation too. And I'm sure Tim Dillon, I would point that out. He's like, I never said that. Look, I'm not really after money. I don't give a fuck about money. I would give it all away because I love the process. What I would give to be poor right now? It's like, what?
They're supposed to sit down with each other and have a sit down. His people reached out to him,
I got to get in on
the
that.
Patreon. Yeah.
That it's developing.
They're not, that they're planning a sit down. Apparently, Gary Vee's like pissed at him or something.
No way, not real.
I don't really know.
They're doing that for publicity.
I don't know what it is.
Did you see Jake Paul knock out Tyron Woodley, the boxing match?
Yeah, I saw the clip.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
It seems real to me, but what do I know?
Yeah.
Either way.
Did Jake Paul do anything before he was a boxer? I mean, I know he did, but what did he do?
It's really a remarkable story because they are like, he's a villain in a sense. Like his persona is this douchebag villain that you want to hate but have to respect.
Was he?
Isn't it crazy?
Who started, Logan or Jake?
The two of them were brothers making early YouTube videos as little kids, prank videos like the Nelk Boys, like that kind of stuff. And they continued, and it's like this. It's just a remarkable story. Like Logan Paul became epically canceled for a video he did about a suicide forest in Japan.
Oh, that was him?
Yeah. He got like banned from Twitter.
I know the story.
They did these videos as like adolescent kids. They go to Japan and they were like disrespectful and they were like punky kids doing silly stuff and built up like Vine followings, I think, like massive, and YouTube followings. But Vine, they were big Vine. I discovered them on Vine. Like of all the funny videos I was watching on Vine of these funny characters and people, they were one of them who would come up on Vine, which was the TikTok before TikTok. It was the perfect setup for TikTok. 7 to 15 second funny videos. King Batch and all these mega new YouTube star influencers.
Why did they end it?
I don't know.
It was so strange. I remember when they announced it. It was so strange.
It could have been like a business financial problem. Like nobody paid for it, and maybe there wasn't enough time to get advertising. I don't know how, but I'm sure it was an internal problem. Not because people didn't like it. I loved it.
The guy who invented it is like a genius. He then invented that trivia HQ trivia right after that.
Right. HQ.
Yeah, and now he invented the biggest like crypto NFT game, like mass player game that's going on.
I just remember Vine being like, there was so much talent and amazingness here. It was the fetal stages of TikTok. Because Vine was full of crazy stuff.
It was a new format.
And it was like so short and so funny and so interesting. And then I'm like, what happened to all those people? It disappeared. And then TikTok came and they all came back. It was like Empire. It was like a sequel. Here we are, like the Avengers. It felt like the Avengers of funny content returned. Like they were all killed at like the end of Avengers Endgame when they all returned.
This time.
TikTok. And I see all these guys again. And let alone they have all millions of followers. Like within a few, I don't know how long it took to build that back up, but they were very quickly there. Yeah. And there were these massive stars created from it. Logan Paul and Jake Paul were this brother duo that did stuff. He went into Japan, and there's this forest that was known for people that would go and commit suicide who were depressed, and like he filmed a guy who was hanging there. Like he was like, holy shit, there's that guy over there. And like I was like, yeah, in his videos he does this provocative stuff, but this one struck a chord of how disrespectful it was. And then the mob just took off. I started seeing hashtags trending, cancel Logan Paul. Like, I hate Logan Paul. Like it just was everywhere. And he had to take himself off whatever Twitter. They banned him, or he
I think they
shut it down.
demonetized him, right?
All of it. Then he tried a few comebacks. I remember following it a little bit. He sat down with Casey Neistat, and he was like, and he was trying to be real. Logan was, and Casey was just like, yeah, but you knew what you were doing, man. Don't pretend like you like totally regret it. Like this was what you were about. Like, don't you feel like your chase for superstardom?
I wish you could see it from my point of view.
I need sunglasses, Michael, but honestly, Logan, he looks like he has dentures. Casey Neistat looks like he has dentures.
He looks scary.
I knew I wanted to be a vlogger. He looks like he has dentures, right? But he turns to, and this is a bit of an uncomfortable interview where he presses Logan Paul on his shtick. He's like, you're trying to come, and Logan was trying to be all like, I just feel like I really learned. And he's like, you didn't learn shit. They hated you for it, so you're regretting it. That's not the same as learning. It was awkward. But then I guess naturally Logan Paul seems to have matured and like become a real like content media person. And I respected that, like his show and everything.
Impulsive. He has a podcast called Impulsive, right? That started next after that.
Impulsive. It started next. That's like phase 2 or 3 or whatever of his thing. And I'm watching it and I'm like, oh, he started this podcast. And like, he sort of waited out the canceledness of his brand. And like, eventually it came back because he kept, I guess, pushing through and putting stuff out. And he has this podcast with his crew of people. Yeah. I don't know how it formed. I don't know the inside of it. And then his brother Jake has become this bad boy. And they both got into boxing.
Oh, and that happened after this suicide forest incident.
Yeah, later on, like because they were like teenagers or 20-year-olds then, and now they're like a little older adults and started training for boxing.
Oh, they're beasts! Oh my god!
And have become pro boxers effectively because they. What like I was watching Joe Rogan about it, and he was like, "What you have to respect, forget their skills as a boxer. Like they have garnered attention, of
that's
the world,
the whole...
and now everyone wants to watch." And he fights Floyd Mayweather, and I'm sure like Mayweather could have won or they held it up, but like he has created demand in a world that's so saturated. The both of them, so you have to respect them, whether you hate them or they're these classic frat boy douchebag vibe.
Right.
Like you have to be like, this is incredible. And like as I watch more and more of it, he becomes more likable. Jake Paul, I think intentionally is the villain and plays that. Yeah. He's just more like, whatever, dude. I don't fucking care. I'll knock him out. Anyone else flop me. I'm just the greatest there ever was. I'm probably greater than Muhammad Ali. Tyson Woolley from Ferguson, Missouri. Little soft, tight. What is it? Tyron Woolley? Tight. You're soft, bro. You're soft. They have this like... And they have this like beef that seems really palpable. But then after the fight, they kind of do this thing. So you're like, you guys both just made $500,000 or whatever it was.
$500,000, way more than that. I don't
know.
The
first fight was half, so the second one was probably more.
I don't know much about boxing, but I know most of it. I mean, you have to obviously know how to box, but most of it is booking fights. Like who can book massive fights?
Who can pull the draw? Yeah. And that's how you can do it. And they pay the boxers.
And he's the best at it now, apparently. Yeah.
These guys. They got no signing bonus, no studio signed them, no one. They just did it themselves through the grind of the new media that we're in, and it's like remarkable to see that they've become the center of culture. It's like, what? And everyone out there, because they're bigger than people who've been in the game for 20 years. Yeah. And it's like, you have to admire that. You cannot. Yeah. You know, it's like NBA. It's like athletes that have bad personas, and everyone's like, he's just the best on the court, and we hate it, but it's true. And as this skill at garnering attention in a world that's so saturated, I have nothing but respect for that because I don't know how they did it. You know that in order to have a rematch, Jake Paul made. Is it Tyron Woolley? I think Tyron.
I don't know.
He's an MMA fighter, retired, but he made him. He's like, you want a rematch? He's like, yeah, only if you get a tattoo that says I love Jake Paul. And he goes, I will. This happened in the ring. And then he tweets a picture of his finger that says, I love Jake Paul, like inside his finger. So the inside.
Why would you do it there?
So you never have to see it.
There's plenty of places on your body.
Yeah, you could do your foot, I guess.
Do like the inside of your leg, tiny.
Could all be a stunt that we're falling for, like they're best buds in there. You could. You probably suspect it is. Anyway,
well, you said yourself, these guys, this is what they do. They make stories. Yeah. That's what Jake Paul said about the Allen boys.
I watched the clip after he told me about it. And he was like, look, man, that was great. And he's like, the other guy felt terrible. He's like, you didn't do anything. Don't worry.
He's such a professional. He's like, this is what we do. we create stories about ourselves.
He was saying that's all they can do is make these viral moments.
I thought he was talking about it like from a seasoned professional of like knowing how to garner attention.
Sure, that's why he
was
able to be to see right through it.
Oh yeah, like immediately he was like, "So what are you guys gonna do if this doesn't work out?"
And he didn't want it to dominate the show. He's like, "Guys, we're done. You can go. I got what you just did." They made it up, and he's like, "I got it. Good. You did good. Go. You can go." So there's a moment where Logan Paul comes off as like he's like the adult in the room. He's like, "Nice one, guys. You got us. You did your thing. Totally. You used our platform and you made us stink, and now everyone's going to talk about it." You know. But what's interesting is you could tell, like, whatever the Island Boys are, it's a blip because they're so.
I haven't listened to the music. I think it's a blip just because of how confrontational they are. How do you sustain a career being that confrontational with everyone you meet?
Unless they're brilliant and they're like, "We're not confrontational, man. We're Harvard grads."
I didn't get that vibe. From them. They're like brothers who aren't used to getting any love from anyone, and they just don't know how to handle it.
Did you see Chris D'Elia's rant on them?
No, Chris D'Elia still?
He's making his way, crawling his way back into it. Which was interesting was like he has his thing where there's controversy around him, and he's kicked off. And then The Fighter and the Kid, which I really like that podcast, which is what's his name? I'm blanking on both their names. The Fighter and the Kid. Who's on The Fighter and the Kid?
Oh, is it that dude from Rogan's Friends?
Yeah, who talks like this? He's like, yo,
Brian Callen?
Brian Callen and
I don't know.
You know his name.
Not Joey Diaz.
Savages, fucking savages.
The dude, that cool dude who fights. Joey something. Joey Morano?
No. I'm blanking. I follow this stuff all the time.
He's
he's a former MMA fighter. And he talks like I don't know.
Yeah.
Brian Callen.
Yeah. Don't think about it. It'll come to you.
Yeah. You got to, it's on your phone. We got to look that up because it's killing me now because like I'm a fan and I follow the stuff. So it's D'Elia.
His name might also be Brian Callen. No.
So it's Brian Callen, Chris D'Elia. Well, Chris D'Elia was a frequent guest on Fighter and the Kid.
Until.
You know it's killing me, Michael.
This is good content.
It's killing me slowly. Anyway, I mean, the comment section, anyone who's watching this is like screaming at it, like, because Joey?
I think it's Joey something.
It's definitely not. It's
David?
Huh?
David?
MMA.
David?
He's like,
yeah.
He looks like he just got punched right before the episode. He's like, oh, very swollen. Let's not think about it for a second for the dead air.
Yeah.
But he's like, I'm back on that show now. I was like, oh, is that over now? Like in the whole cancelness, I know there's like a lot to talk about the cancel culture and the Me Too movement and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But you also didn't want it to happen to people you liked.
Speaking of...
Wait. Point is that I see that show is back. Right? That show is back now. Who?
Chris D'Elia. You guys used to be in touch.
No, but I'm saying the podcast has reformed and it's like back and it's D'Elia. Cool. And I see clips now and it's Brian Callen's like, and Chris D'Elia's like, they're talking. He's like, oops, you interrupted me. Oops, because I was speaking. I don't have a good impression, even though he's so impressed. It's such a guy you can imitate, but he's like, oops, guy, I was talking. And then he goes, the sweatshirt, somebody gave it to me. And he eats salami like this. And Brian was like, don't eat it like that. Hey, don't eat it like that. Don't do your thing. Don't do it. Don't do it. And his name is, I keep trying to think of it. Noam. No.
It's something ethnic.
Michael, I'm sorry to do this. They do this on Rogan, right? Where they look stuff up?
Yeah.
I don't have internet on this freaking computer. What am I doing? I don't know. I'll figure it out. It's just killing me right now. Brian Callen, Chris D'Elia, and... Anyway,
I think we have to move on.
What did you want to talk about? For some reason, it bothers me.
Speaking of canceled comedians doing specials, Louie just came out with a special, and I only watched a clip so far. Right. I want to watch the whole thing together and talk about it.
Right.
But I watched the clip, and for the first minute, all I could think about was the thing, the context of him getting canceled, kind of apologizing, but like kind of making fun of the apology, the whole thing. Mm-hmm. And then and that was gonna be my take on it. Like, I really like he's just gotta like it's the only thing he should talk about because that's all I care about. And then a minute and a half into it, he's so good. I was just so lost in the joke and I was laughing and it was
he addressed this whole thing in his previous special.
No, but
head on.
It feels
and
I don't know what to say.
Did you see that last one when he talked?
Yeah.
How could you have seen that last one and still like wait? It's not the elephant in the room anymore.
It's just how it feels.
I'm not saying you should be over it, but like I just wanted to make sure you were aware that he did this other special and said, "So that's all I'm going to say about that shit." And he's like, "You want to talk about it? Imagine everyone knows your thing. Obama knows my thing." He was like, "Oh shit."
No, it's funny, but I don't know. Just the feeling I have is like I want to hear more about it until I'm sick of it. I don't know. Okay. That's just how I feel. So that's what I'm thinking.
Okay, you were aware that he had explicitly.
I know he addressed it. I guess it felt like he
didn't
address
your year?
It substantially enough. Also, we're also coming from the perspective, I think, of most guys who are like, it's not a big deal. I know most women who I talk to about it, they all agree it's a huge deal what he did.
He deserved exactly what he got.
I don't think I'm ever going to understand it quite, and I don't think a guy maybe... I think it's tougher to understand if you're a guy, but apparently
and it's tougher to understand if you're a girl, if that it's not a big deal, and vice versa, whatever.
Right. So I don't want to discount what he did.
It's tougher to identify in this case with who the victim and the and whatever crime he was whatever he was doing, the people who felt victimized and the people who were victimizing.
Yeah.
I think it speaks maybe to a real divide in women's experiences with uncomfortable situations that never got the attention or the justice they deserved. They just had to tolerate it. Mm-hmm. There's probably been a lot of women who've been with guys who put a sort of pressure on them that couldn't be qualified as anything criminal or anything other than that's just part of like the dynamics you have to live with.
Yeah.
And it's unpleasant. But what are they going to say? They're going to say, like, yeah, he's a douchebag. Don't hang out with him. And they don't get the proper sympathy. And this maybe was an opportunity to just vent that frustration via what was going on. Because if you're saying you talk to these girls, they're like, yes. Yeah. Because it speaks maybe to some inner... But for guys, it was like, we're animals. We do weird shit all the time. A lot of guys were like, I wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
But they're like, they identify with the idea of like, women don't know how disgusting and crazy and we're all animals here. Yeah. And this sheds light on that. So there's a sympathy that goes out to Louie to be like, I shouldn't have done it. It's not right.
Right.
But like, we know that side of guyness, that perverted side.
Right. But from the female perspective, I wouldn't want to discount it just as like, that's gross. I think
not gross.
It's
traumatic.
It's traumatic.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I'm saying it speaks to experience. I think a lot of women can identify with feeling traumatized by an experience that that didn't get any sort of justice or attention.
That you discount as like
that got discounted because they were told this is just like, listen, guys can be a little whatever pushy or horny or this, and they do things or they touch you in ways that are unwarranted.
Right.
And guys are like, yeah, you got to touch, and then if they like, it's like ask permission later. Better to say I'm sorry than ask permission.
Right.
You know, and that's how guys are pressured to do it too. You got to make a move. Right. You got to be proactive / aggressive. That kind of dynamic is foisted on both sexes, I think. So in this case, the guys are like, yeah, but like he asked if it was cool, like, and even though like a lot of guys I know didn't identify with like what he got off on, like that's why he didn't get a lot of sympathy from guys because they're like what? Like Adam Carolla when the whole thing came out was like, so about Louie, I think there's like 5% of guys who want to masturbate in front of another chick. And then there's the rest of us who want to be alone in private. Stay away. It's a solo job. If you're going to masturbate and do it to yourself, you're going to be alone. And then maybe there's 2% of Louie's out there. So I don't get it, but I think it's overblown. That felt pretty Carolla.
The job was good.
What?
The job was good.
Job.
Yeah.
I think that, and he said like so many guys want to like sort of be like, or want to try to understand this, but they're like, when asked about it, they're like, I don't feel that
it's
at
a tough one. And then he calls his special though, sorry, which is it's subversive.
Yeah,
so then you see that and you're like,
sorry, I'm me.
Like, yeah, or
I'm going to do comedy.
Like,
I think it's sorry, I'm going to keep going.
Right. But either way, it's not quite. I mean, I guess how long do you have to own what you're doing for? But I mean, you know, he's
what was the
poking
last
fun at the
special
whole
called?
thing. I don't know if it had a name. Anyway, but just to speak to his brilliance, with all of that in my head, a minute and a half into his routine,
the comedy
he has me, and it's like, you're good, man. You're good at what you do.
I mean, when he was doing, there was a set that he did fresh after the scandal where he still kind of went out there and did a secret show.
Yeah.
For like supporters, ardent supporters, and the room died.
Yeah.
And he could crush. It shows the power of the art. Like that comedy is powerful. And you really have to separate the comedy from the comedian. He's the vehicle that's doing it effectively, but it's brilliant writing and he's a brilliant comic and that will always be there. And everybody kind of knows that. Yeah. And it's kind of like when James Brown got accused of doing horrible things, beat his wife. I don't know what they actually, at the time he was smeared and did terrible things, and then he gets up and puts on a show and everyone loves it.
Yeah. Well, yeah,
because
that's
art,
all great artists.
People, they do that. He's like, it was a great show. Or like weird, it's so with comedy we assume there's this weird perception of comedy that it's not. It's the person.
Yeah.
It's him. That's just Louie up there on stage. No, he's doing an act.
Right.
And like people with comedy, because it's sold as so authentic and presented that way, that's the brilliance of comedy and stand-up in general. It's so close to the person, but it isn't the person. They're doing an act. They're doing scripted stuff. Yeah. Every movement he makes is worked out, but you're given the illusion that you're just listening to the person.
Right.
And everyone thinks comedy then when somebody makes a statement in an act, it's a real statement, and it gets this disproportionate flack and criticism when it's controversial, as opposed to a movie or a song that's controversial. It doesn't get the same amount of flack.
Right. Yeah, maybe part of that is like part of the humor is he says the most awful things that we all think, but he's a good guy, so you're allowed to laugh. Then this comes out and you're like, oh, you are a sicko, and then he sort of didn't like. So I don't mean to judge with sicko, but and then
that was
he has this like really weird kind of abusive kink, and then in his comedy where all that should be worked out, he sort of didn't like quite address that collision of like I really am fucking sick. Let's talk about it. Not in that way of like
we didn't
all
watch
those
the
thoughts
whole
about
thing.
murder. Like that comes from a real place.
Well, that's the thing. Like what I thought was going to be one of the most damaging things that I thought was going to be a big cost to him when that happened was that whole persona. I'm just a regular guy like you with all the same sick thoughts, and I'm vocalizing them and expressing them.
I'm just Louie.
And then she goes, that.
I don't know.
But the second there's a little bit of real sexual perversion there and somebody who was victimized by it in some way or felt that way, then it undermines the whole act. You can't watch it. It would be as if Quentin Tarantino was accused of beheading someone in his if Quentin Tarantino was accused of violence.
Or using the N-word casually.
Right, like the whole thing. Or was an actual racist, or like you found out he like killed people. Yeah. You can't watch it would be much harder to watch a movie, even though it probably wouldn't, because the movie would be good, but you'd be like, this is a problem, because your whole violence premise is that it's art. Right. You're portraying and expressing and unloading something. Right. But if you're actually violent, this is not funny anymore, and it's not entertaining anymore. It's sick. I'm enjoying something that you do, and or if you watch a movie where people are actually murdered, it would be hard. You could never watch that. Right. The illusion is the most important part of the act.
It also brought into focus how rich and powerful he is, which also goes against that sort of like I'm just Louie type of thing. He's like, he's like, have you ever lost $30 million in a day? Where it's like, oh, it's like a little less funny to push an old woman out of the way in the airport when you're making $30 million. Just the whole. That all coming to the surface.
But honestly, good jokes are good jokes. Like that's the thing. He goes. It's like
still manages to do it.
He's like, my year was so bad, it's funny. It's like having diarrhea, like really bad diarrhea. Eventually, you're just like, oh my god, this is ridiculous. At first, it's like, oh my god, it's terrible. And then if it keeps going, you're like, what is happening? You just have to laugh. You're like, I'm still shitting. So that was one of his jokes about it. And everyone's like, that is like really bad diarrhea. When it's so bad, you start to just laugh like, holy crap.
He has a podcast. I think he moved to France. I think he moved to Paris. He has a podcast with his girlfriend who's French.
Really?
Talking about comedy. It's on his website, and I've been meaning to listen to it. I don't know if it's a podcast. It's like a 10 episode thing maybe where they just sat and talked, and we should listen to that. How long are we?
We are definitely
good?
At the hour, and it's been good.
All right.
This was a good one. Maybe fresh off a Zoom call. Where
I wanted to talk about scary dads.
Set up next week's episode.
Set up scary dads. Those dads when you were a little kid that just scared you, and your relationship to them now. Because I have a story. They scared me.
But yeah, scary dads, scary moms too.
Yeah,
it's legit.
Yeah,
I got kicked out of a football party once, like a Super Bowl party in like 8th grade. I'm like, what the hell? She's like, so the party's ending now. I got sent upstairs. It was me and one other big wild kid, and I'm like, huh. It wasn't the right thing to do. Yeah. But I was kicked out.
All right, next time.
Let's do Scary Dads next week on next week's episode. That is Buckle Up episode 11. We'll do more some NFT stuff because I saw a video that was actually Gary Vee summing up NFTs in a good way. Should we talk about it next week?
I have a comment on your video on our Instagram. Check out that comment. I think it was a good point about NFTs. Go on our Instagram and check it out.
It was basically, the main point was NFTs. There are a lot of blown up ones that are way overpriced and way overvalued, but it's sort of like some of them are Beanie Babies that will blow up and then go away. And really NFTs are stuffed animals.
Yeah.
All of stuffed animals.
Right.
The whole industry of stuffed
animals. A good idea? Generally, sure.
And there's a Cabbage Patch Kid, and then there's a Beanie Baby, and a random one here and there, and a My Little Pony. But there's a ton of failed ones. But we don't say blow up dolls are bullshit.
Right. And also, it's more like NFTs are cotton. One way to use them is the way they're being used now, stuffing them into animals. There will be other things that are also NFTs that'll have nothing to do with JPEGs of art or Bored Apes or whatever.
And it's also what an NFT can grant you. That's what I'm seeing. It's really what the NFT gives you. So if the artist gives you an NFT, there has to be something behind it. If Billy Joel releases a bunch of NFTs, then it grants you access to Billy Joel in some way or comp tickets. It has to have value or something.
Well, the value, so on Instagram, a lot of people left comments on that video. One of the guys that left a comment had his profile picture was a Bored Ape, which is like the premier NFT.
You commented back to
and
Raza or something?
The only reason I'm responding to you and not anyone else is because you have a Bored Ape NFT. You must be someone of some sort of value. Status. I want to get you involved in the conversation. And that's basically right now what NFTs are. It's like something you can use to project status online. And it's pretty freaking cool.
It's cool because we'll end with this quote from Gene Hackman in Enemy of the State. When it comes to Bored Panda, CryptoPunks, and the NFT community, you're either really smart or really stupid.
Buckle up, baby.
Do you know that quote?
No.
You're either really smart or really stupid. That's his whole thing to Will Smith, the whole movie. You're either really smart or really stupid. Will Smith sends up the whole scene at the end where the mobsters end up killing the other guys, the politicians, and he goes, because he sees what Will Smith is doing, sets up the whole final scene. You're either really smart or really stupid. And at the end, everyone's dead. Gene Hackman goes, really smart. Buckle up, episode 11. Thanks for sticking with us for the next 10 episodes. Look at Michael. He's really come around.
I feel more comfortable.
He's even dicking around with me with the fingy.